Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Sync-sters. I think this is Sync-sters episode 3. This is a conversation between Michael Wann and I. I had another idea about this episode, but Michael took the reins because some serious Masonic themes were happening throughout the day. So I hope you enjoy this. If you want to find out more about Michael, he's at susquehannaalchemy.com, Susquehanna Alchemy on Instagram, on YouTube under the same name, Susquehanna Alchemy everywhere. And yeah, so I hope you enjoy. Michael's the best friend that I've never met. So, that's fun. I have to first debrief because so much well, not so much. There's like two things, but just
All
based
right.
on like what we talked about this morning, uh, gangster Mennonites, and what was the other thing? What was style? Oh, and then baseball because I had sent your episode to Taylor, and Taylor wanted to get like an intro to you, and I was like, oh well, you should just listen to Michael on his first, like my first introduction to you as well. So the context is that her family has a very big like theosophical society, like passing down through the generations thing. So she starts hearing this baseball stuff. That's why I was like, Taylor's screaming at me about your episode, blah blah blah. Because now she's like, no, I'm rethinking everything, and that's happening to her.
So did you see what I posted on Instagram yesterday?
No,
Can you go look?
does it tie in? It ties in.
Why else would I be telling you?
Well, I was thinking too, like, you know what? We're the original syncsters here because I can't, like, anything you can sync, I'm going to sync. Anything you can sync, I can sync faster. All right, hold on. Like, okay, yeah. So this is what I
So
mean.
did you scroll to the second image?
Well, I just
That's
read
what
I
it looks
made a
like.
new ball today. Yeah. Oh, so you made a baseball.
I made a baseball. Like, look at
Cool.
the second image. Like, look at that
Cool.
stitching.
Yeah, no, no. I'll send it to Taylor right now. She's just going to
I've made
her
many
pan.
balls before. I've never done that stitching. Like that came out of nowhere to make that. And then the coloring of it, like it really looks and feels like a baseball. I didn't do that on purpose. And none of the other balls ever looked like a baseball before. I did a different stitch and different leather.
Well, guess we're right on track.
I think we're right on track.
We're right on track. So it was baseball. We were talking about how you got new suspenders. You're going full blown Mennonite, and we are talking about making it gangster. So we have our friends visit today, and we decide to take the kids to the park. And right next to the park is the liquor store because that makes sense for the parents. And in the parking
Canada.
lot, right? Yeah, no, it does. In the parking lot is horse and buggy, dude waiting, like young guy, young Mennonite dude waiting for his buddy. His buddy gets out and he's got like, they looked old order to me because they're all like, it's all black, but they have sunglasses on. The guy had like a cowboy hat a little bit. It was really like, it was real nice. And I was like, wow, that's kind of gangster. So I'm like, oh my God, as if Michael and I were talking about, but like they were like, it was too much. It wasn't just your little, stylish what you have going on. This was like, wow, I didn't even know Mennonites drink. So then
Well,
I
I mean,
pull it. So I hold on, one more. I pull it up on my phone. First thing that comes up on my phone is this article from the Gents of Lancaster. So I'm just kind of like, okay, here we go. So now it's full circle. I'm about to talk to Michael in an hour, and there we go. So that's what I had to tell you.
um, that's a lot. All
Yeah.
right. So this is happening. This is happening like uh everywhere, right?
Hmm.
But it's certainly happening everywhere in my life and everyone who I talk to. And so, like, this is really what the realm is looking like.
Well, it's funny that you just say realm because I realize that I've been using that.
Well, this is going to sound nuts. This is going to, can I sound nuts?
I expect you to. Like in a good way. I want you to.
Right. I don't know what it was, but I know how it happened. And that being that that event in the Masons. All right. Have I ever walked you through this story?
No, but go on. It's just
So,
also just more synchronicity because after last night's recording with Taylor, and I mean, I'll leave this in for her to hear because it's just so perfect. She starts listening and she says, "Has Michael ever had any like repercussions from putting all of this incredible information out?" And I said, "Oh, yes, that happened actually just this year." And she's like, "Right, you'll have to tell me that story tomorrow." Those were her like good night words to me. So I'm like, wow, what do you know? Anyways, continue. No, I don't
so,
know. I know the gist, I guess.
I kind of like well documented, like, I mean, if you want to go back and look, it's kind of, like I well documented, uh, the whole sort of Masonic thing, like from the very beginning. Like, if you're really like, if it's easy for me to do it because it's, it's my life, but there is a trajectory throughout that entire kind of like telling of the story of these strange, like, uh, um, touches by Freemasonry. Like, do you remember when I got that poem in the mail?
Is that did it have like a coin or something?
There was a coin and there was this poem, and it was in like a Freemasonic folder. Okay. And it was kind of like, I'm pretty certain I know who sent it, but I don't know who that person was, meaning I did a session with them once before, but I know whatever I know from the session. And it came from this person, and it was like exceptionally well done for what it was. And then it kind of triggered some things. That was December 2020, I believe. Okay. It was the day I did my first call with Howdy. Like the whole thing, like there was like all these sort of synchronicities, and that opened up a whole bunch of doors for me. Like that was wild. And then a bunch of months later, it was literally the day after I recorded an episode on Higher Side Chats. I got another package from that person, and this thing was, and I was literally on the night before on the Higher Side Chats talking about the previous letter. Like that was part of my story. And I'm like, hey, you won't even believe what happened last time since we spoke. And then I went, I told that story. And the next day I got another package from them. And here's where it's even crazier. So that package, it was like it had a false, like all the packages are themed, and it's like exceptionally well done. And so the theme of this one package was the movie The Prestige. Okay. And I've talked about The Prestige a bunch. So it's not like it's not like how did they know that I like The Prestige? I'm like, well, I talked about it. And obviously this guy's paying attention. But where it got weird is not only did it come the next day, that night. So I recorded with THC, and then my boys were staying with me. I was like, all right, let's go watch a movie. Like my brain is like fried. And they went and they picked like whatever was available on like the Amazon show, the Amazon network, and they picked The Prestige. And so the next morning in the mail came this package where it is the return address is a character from The Prestige. And my boys are like, what is going on? Okay. Like,
And
that's weird.
sorry, like they didn't know that you already liked that movie.
Oh, they already knew it. If they're paying attention, like, but the timing of it.
No, sorry, I mean your kids.
No, yeah, they probably did. They've known I like that movie for like a long time. It wasn't like I told them about it that day,
Right.
but that was when, like, of all of the times we ever watched movies, they're like, let's watch The Prestige. And it was 100% driven by them.
And sorry, that's three things in the mail?
No, two things in the mail. What came in that was the second one came, they all came with gifts. And this one was a gilded bird cage. It was probably 10 inches high, like maybe this wide, like maybe like 4 inches wide. It was made of like a plated metal, like it was solid. It was a nice piece. It was like a strange piece. They sent a bird cage. Now that was the symbol within The Prestige, but it's a little bit strange.
I've never seen the movie before, so I'm gonna have to watch it now. Like I don't know
Oh,
anything about
it
it.
is one of the best. It is one of the best. All right.
Okay.
So
Hold up.
then
They sent you
December,
a bird cage, like wait, life size?
I'm sorry.
You said they sent you a bird cage?
Yeah, a bird cage.
No. Like
Yes.
like life size?
No, like that. It was like a real. It was like a miniature version, like maybe 10 inches high, maybe 8 inches wide, and it's really well made of a sturdy metal. Like it's
Okay.
like a nice thing.
So I think I'm missing, like, you're getting these communications, but what's like the nature of the, like, each time there's a letter with it?
Yeah,
And like
like
what
the
are, like, what
poem.
do you mean? Like, hello, Michael Wann. We are sending you now yet another, hey,
It's the
love what you're
craziest thing.
doing, Mike. And here's
So
a
like
bird cage.
so the first one was it was like an official Freemasonic document, and you open it up. Like imagine if you got like a certificate, you were just like initiated into like I'm now a master mason, and here's your like the suitable for framing certificate. This would be the envelope or the folder which that would be handed in, and it's embossed on the front like Freemasonry. Like this is like insider kind of stuff. Like you could, if you wanted to, you could go buy them online, but it's like it's official, whatever official is. Like I don't know if it's official like actually coming from them. I don't know if it's someone who's like trying to spoof me. So in there is a poem, and the poem is called the Susquehanna Gypsy, and it is 5 different stanzas, and it is perfect. Like the rhyme and the rhythm, like, and then what was being said in it, like this was like really well done. Like everything that came from them was well done. And then I had spoken in one of the shows that I put out about a silver dollar, about how like I was reading about a silver dollar, and then that's 2 books which talked about a silver dollar at the same time, and the silver dollar like came to me, like something like that. And so they play upon no, that was the silver dollar that arrived. I was reading a book. I was reading a friggin' book, and it was about a silver dollar, and then it came like that same day
Okay.
I read that page.
Okay, that's why I said, I think that, didn't I just say that they send you a coin?
Yeah.
I think that's because that's when I fell off of watching you and Emily, because because I was experiencing like too much synchronicity with you, and I was like, wow, I don't feel like I have free will anymore, or maybe you don't have free will anymore, or who knows what's going on. And that's probably the last time I watched one of your two like
That's
you
when it
and,
began. And it kept getting
yeah.
stranger and stranger. And so I didn't receive anything else from that guy. But then right before my birthday, I received an invitation to present. It was like, hi, I'm a Freemason of this lodge, and I head a like sub Freemason group from all the different Freemasonic uh, area temples of people who are really into esoteric studies, and would like for you to present at our quarterly meeting. We're fans of your work. And then here's the address, and this is the date.
Seems
And
safe.
what?
Seems safe enough.
Seems safe enough. So anyway, so that whole story is so like, I mean, that's a whole like I could take 2 hours telling that because it's such a rich story, but like it's well documented. But the point I'm trying to make is um I went through a roller coaster to that night. And then like my grand finale of that night was when I presented, like I turned it around upon them. Like I flipped the story, and I said, you all are witnesses of my initiation, and it's my initiation with life. And I bowed.
I think you're missing the point. Not the point. I think you're missing the part where you have to say what your body was telling you before you did that presentation, because I remember you telling me that you were having a little resistance.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. So I meet life very different than that. I meet life with what comes to me. And I go by like my instincts. So what you're saying is it's foreign to my approach. Like I understand that approach, but my approach is always spontaneous, for like better for worse. That's just how I go. That's just how I do it.
And
And so
you
like
weren't
I'll
reading
go,
those red flags, though, is what I'm asking.
I'm sorry.
You weren't reading your bodily reactions. Like,
I
I don't
didn't
know.
need to. I could read all the red flags in the world. Like I was experiencing them. I was like, I decoded that whole letter. Like that
Right.
whole letter was like the deepest, most encoded thing. And it was so like in your face encoded. Like to the dates and the locations. Like every single thing was like, we're going to ritually sacrifice you. Like all the stuff I've ever gone on a show about, this is right. Like it was down to this, you know, how like 57 was like my number.
Yes.
The day they sent it, which included the day of the presentation, was 57 days later. Like everything was like that. And as soon as you began looking at this letter from that lens, it was like, this is exactly where this is the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's death, where the whole thing like kicked off with COVID. So anyway, I'm forced with this. And this is happening right on my 50th birthday, and there's an eclipse on my birthday. And there was a friggin' surprise party thrown for me. I've never had a surprise. Like, it was just like, so like, I get that invitation. I'm like, yeah, of course I'm going to take it. I'm not going to say no. Like, I understand like all of the red flags, but I'm like, this is the world I created. I'm not going to run from it.
Well, yeah,
but
you did bow for it too.
Well, there was a long story from this to that.
Okay.
Because I had to go through like, holy shit, do I really want to do this? And I looked at it. There was part of me, you know how like sometimes you lie in bed and you fantasize? Not that type of fantasy. And some fantasy which I have when I lie in bed sometimes is this. What if I were to disappear?
Right.
Like what would it be like to start like fresh somewhere tomorrow where no one has any sort of preconceived notion of you?
Yeah.
All right. So that would be Mike's fantasy. So this thing comes in my lap. And like, I tell this friend of mine who's like, his tendency tends to be more on the paranoid scale. Like I'm looking at the red flags and I'm like, there's the red flags, but like, I go and I tell this to my friend, I'm like, what do you think? And he's like, yeah, you got to get out of Dodge. He's like, they're coming and they're going to friggin' kill you. You are so friggin' dead. He's like, hold on. And so this guy, I had no idea he had these connections. No idea. And he calls me up. He's like, listen, I've got someone. You're going to get like 3 hours heads up notice. When you get the call, you're going to meet at a truck stop, which is given to you. And at this point, like, you're going to go with him. I'm like, where am I going? He's like, somewhere up in the Northeast, and you're going to get like a whole new identity. He's like a new social security, like all of this stuff. And I'm like, holy shit, I fantasized about this. And then I was like,
you could have still made that happen if you really wanted to.
Well, that was the point. I didn't want to make that happen.
You're so weird.
So I was like, it was like a fantasy. And then it was like, it presented itself. And I'm like,
it just sounds like you're like a little escapism. Why that keeps coming up?
That was total, like, I never was serious about it. That would be like something you would lie in bed and you fantasize about. Like, oh God, wouldn't it be nice if I could just disappear, not deal with all this stuff that's in front of me? So that presented itself. And then I was like, I don't really want that. So anyway, I was like, well, I got to go through with this. And I'm like, I don't really believe that's going to happen, but I recognize I was forced with this sort of decision. Is you've told all these different stories about this is that, and now it's on you. And so if you believe that to be true, then you can't go there. But if you don't believe that's true, then you're going to walk through those doors. And at the end of the day, I was like, wow, that's a weird way of putting you. Exactly. That's how I was sitting with it. So I'm sitting with it like that. And then I'm like, and I'm reading my boys this book, and this line came from the book, and it's from the Wheel of Time. And it's Lan says to Rand, like Lan is this guy who's like came out of nowhere in Rand's life. And he's like he's teaching him how to be a man. And like Rand is like thrown in this situation with all these Aes Sedai, which is the witches. And he's like, all right, Rand, you're being called in front of the head of them all. And Rand's like, why the hell am I being called in front of the head of them all? And he's like, I'm going to tell you something. He's giving them all this advice. He's like, this is the one thing. As a man, you face whatever comes your way on your feet. And that was exactly where I'm like, I read that at the same time, like any of this, like internal sort of like, what am I going to do with it? And I was like, of course, I'm going to go and do this. And then I said, how am I going to do this? Once I committed, like, I'm going to do this. I don't have any other choice. I could have run away. I'm not going to, it's just not my way. So I went there and I basically gave him the presentation. The whole thing was fine. Like it was like in a restaurant, like no one looked sinister or creepy. It wasn't like that Beyonce chair dance sort of like free massage. It wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all.
How
Like
did you know
that's what
that's
I'm
what I
like.
had in my head?
But you know, I'm talking about that one video of the Freemasonic Lodge.
No, I don't, but
Holy crackers. Well, anyway, search that later. You're gonna love it. It's Beyonce chair dance Freemasonic Lodge.
perfect.
All right.
I
So
will.
so I go there. It's like no big deal. Like a bunch of guys, really likable, kind of like weird, but like I'm kind of weird. So it's like I got you, you got me, and like I did my thing. They're all like a little bit drunk, and then I flipped the script, and I basically went. I was like, "Did you call me?" I literally said this to the group, and I'm on stage, and these guys are loving it. Like they wanted to be entertained. Like I'm here to entertain you, and I go and I gave them their show. And then I say to him, I'm like, did you guys call me here to cause me bodily harm? I do a total straight face. Like the whole time, I'm like, I'm good on stage. Like I'm energetic. And then suddenly, like, I'm like, did you do that? And then they all just start laughing. And they're like, we wouldn't tell you or whatever. And then I was like, well, did you choose this for a certain, and they're like, no. And I'm like, I didn't think so. And then I went down the letter which I got from them, and I broke that letter down in the same way that I just broke down the John Smith map. And I was like, you told me you guys had no idea that this was going on, and this happened. And so the way I see it is this. You in our society are the greatest or a great symbol of initiation. Like we know your organization is the symbol of initiation. So you all are here to witness my initiation with whomever it is writing this script. And I took a bow. And then my life turned fucking upside down the
I know,
next
I was
day.
gonna say like this is just audio, but like my face to anybody listening to this, I'm just like dying this whole time.
You're dying?
Yes, because I would never do any of this. So you just being like you're just laughing about it and I'm just like, "Oh wow, absolutely not."
Oh my God. So so I went through the gauntlet,
Yeah.
probably still in the gauntlet a bit. Um like without a doubt, it's been the greatest 7 months of my life.
Well, you're approaching a year to all of it.
So the whole point of me like bringing that up and like recognizing this the Mennonite gangster, like the Mennonite get like that I came from Baltimore to the Amish countryside. I'm literally and I'm living out the movie in a way called Gangster's Paradise, right? Like I'm a Weird Al Yankovic character, like the Amish Paradise, like which is like
Absolutely. That's a
if
great
you
hit.
look at that as a blueprint, like for whatever reason, like that's not my plan, but that's what's happening. And the craziest thing is, like right in the middle, like when I was still in Baltimore, there's a picture which I posted on Instagram with me with this guy named Paradise Gray. And Paradise Gray was like considered like the scribe or maybe one of the historians as it relates to the golden age of hip hop. Like he was in the center of it all. And
Oh,
so like
yeah. You showed me that picture. I remember.
so now I got a paradise in this like Amish paradise, like it's all of these things are presenting themselves. I'm like, I see that, and I'm like, all right, I guess I got to get suspenders. Like it's
The next natural step.
because I'm following the same script that brought me here. Like
Right.
I don't like
Like, do you mean
by
specifically to Gnome Countryside now, or do you mean like to Lancaster before? Like, and you're doing like a redo.
what I can say for certain is how I'm selecting my next right step. And
Okay.
it's really what's the next right step. Um, and so looking at it, like there are redo qualities, undoubtedly. Like I went away from Lancaster. I'm still not really in Lancaster, like where like what as a name place, Lancaster can be confusing because it has multiple implications. It could talk about an overall county, which is very big. It could refer to like the city, or it could refer to like a certain part of the county. So I'm in Lancaster County, but I'm not really part of Lancaster. So I'm still like I'm on the outskirts. But the point, what I'm beginning to see by really subscribing to meeting life in this very, very spontaneous way, which, you know, I'm not recommending that to anyone else. I'm just saying, like, I'm describing what the process is and what I'm seeing. This is going to circle back to something. Seemingly started from that whole Freemasonic thing, whatever that may be. And I'm not, and you know, on the record, I'm no Freemason. I've never made no oaths or nothing like that. But I have been. I did make fraternity oaths. So if I'm being completely transparent, so all fraternities, particularly the one was the early ones in the United States, do have Freemasonic rights and or roots. But I haven't done anything like willingly into that organization. I'm just saying that to be like fully transparent, because I'm saying some weird stuff. If I was listening to this from someone else, I would have red flags about the person who was talking, or at least I'd have questions. So I'm just sharing it how I'd best
You
understand.
took the generic ones that every kid would take, is what you're trying to say.
I don't know what you mean by that.
I don't know either, because we don't really have fraternities here.
Oh, well,
I just mean like
I
the
just went
rights.
to the
I'm just saying they're
fraternity
kind
in
of
state.
like some kind of brotherly love and solidarity or something.
Like Greek letter fraternities, you like they're like pre-Masonic organizations in a way. Like they're filled with ritual and like Skull and Bones. You know what Skull and Bones is?
Obviously, I mean, like you weren't buried in the ground and like had to say
No,
your
but
sexual
if
history.
you were to go and look at that as an extreme,
Right. Sure. It
and
wasn't.
then you'd be like, well, what would that continuum look like if it was maybe 85% less creepy?
Okay, cool. Yeah. A little
So
watered
like
down.
there's an element to it. And
Right.
so that's why I gave like pause. If you were to go and look at my expression when we started down this path, it's because I was like, I wasn't agree. Like, I know it's not like I'm not saying it was Skull and Bones. I'm saying, but I did like raise my hand and say like the oath, because I just said a moment earlier that I've taken no oaths, and I didn't. And like I felt strange about saying that sentence so flippantly without then saying, well, actually I did take an oath. And so like that's all.
Well,
That
that
would be
kind of
integrity for me. Like that whole
gotcha.
line of
Well,
needing to
we
say,
appreciate your integrity.
well, thank you.
Well, I was gonna
But
say,
it's put me in a really strange, like weird, magical place where there is this strange correlation, like really, really strong between whatever is going on in my headspace in my life and whoever I'm talking to and whatever's going on. Like it's materializing faster and more it's just becoming like evident that the game has changed. And by the
okay,
game is
no,
like
that's
how
a
life is
really,
played.
yeah, no, please. Okay, stop there for a second, because well, first of all, I have lots to say, but I think that's really funny that I had this whole intention in my head about how I was going to kind of introduce you like as a man and your work. And then you jump right into the Mason stuff, because my 12 friends who listen to my podcast don't know who the heck you are, I'm assuming. And then anyone else would already find you, let's say, just from a hashtag. But I love how you've already like dove right into the deep end right off the bat. And it still mirrors my day, because this is an episode of Sync-sters. Just because I literally said today, oh, I'm 33. And I made a joke to our friends that came, because I said that I passed my initiation, and we walked down the main street here, and our neighbor told us that the Masonic Lodge owns all of the main drag, because they're like, ooh, we could buy a restaurant. And they're like, well, you're going to have to talk to the lodge because they're selling it now. And then I started making all these Mason jokes. That was right before we saw the Mennonite guys buying the booze. So I'm just like, it's really funny that I could try to drive this, podcast episode somewhere, but it wasn't meant to be. But I want to say, like where you had just stopped, my whole thing that I wanted to talk about was when you were doing your Susquehanna, like when you were just finding out the first rites and stuff, because this whole thing is about consciousness, and you're telling me that the game is changing now. So that means that you're feeling, I mean, tell me if I'm wrong, I'm talking for you, but that means that you're feeling something a little bit different than your normal way of navigating how you interact or like receive your synchronicity, or just how you are consciously going about your life, even though you're saying you meet life in a completely different way than I would. And I would say like most people don't, because that would scare them away in so many ways. But do you remember, like, are you like, if this is a cycle kind of returning and you're seeing where you want to go with this and some things are familiar, my original question to you was like, when you were finding the rites of the Susquehanna, like, do you remember your day to day? Like, was your mind just being blown, or were you paranoid, or were you like freaking out? And like, how does that compare to now?
Um, I've never been paranoid.
Okay, well, yeah, it doesn't have to be paranoid. I
But
just
I've never,
thought
I
maybe
never
putting
had
that on there.
it was the most, it was the most obvious thing. Like, it was the most obvious thing in the world to go and tell the story. Discovering it, I mean, I don't know. I don't remember what I was like back then. I mean, to be like, I can remember the experiences, but if I'm trying to think of like what I was feeling, like I I guess maybe I went through a period, but if I did, I don't even recall that. Like, it just always seemed like this is the next right step.
What was the timeline?
What do you
Because
mean?
I was like, while you were talking, I was thinking how this is so funny. Like, you're telling me how you went to go speak to a bar full of Masons, but that's really very similar in a broad strokes way to
Mm-hmm.
you going to teach a college class on time. And I didn't even ask you about how that went, by the way.
Uh, yeah.
So
So,
it's just kind of funny because, like, at the end of the day, I was like, well, I wonder if these Masonic dudes, they were like, no, this is something you have to go to, because you need to. This guy figured it out, and you guys are like, you know what I mean? I imagine like you're teaching them.
whatever. So I have freed myself. You're making like interesting observations or thought-provoking observations, but I have freed myself from a lot, like needing to have that narrative, um, like what it means. I'm just like I'm more comfortable going through life with what it is. And what I mean by that is like whatever is in front of my life, like realistically, like so for example, like me lying in bed fantasizing about like, wouldn't it be nice to escape? Like that's not what it is. That's just like me, like, doing something and like having this fantasy or what have you. Like now it's just like I'm focused on whatever is in my life, like the most obvious things. Um, what am I going to do? Like, what's next? How far can I see in the future? So, um, that's how I was back then as well.
But well, yes, but you're also uncovering a mystery, and you were like kind of winning with each discovery. So I imagine there was a little bit more of like a energy behind it versus like not kind of, well, I don't mean not caring, because of course you care. I just mean like there was probably more of like a momentum, let's say.
Well, what do you mean by momentum?
Like, well, what are you describing right now? Because you're kind of saying that you're just kind of going with the flow, like you're in flow and you're not having like an expectation about what's coming.
So that was it. That's how I felt in the very early days too.
Oh,
And in
okay.
the early days, like I just knew this is what I had to do. And
Oh,
I
so do
kept,
you
and
have that now?
uh, now's different. So like then I didn't really have anything else. Like
Right.
I have a track record. I mean, this is how realistically I've always lived my adult life, if you will. Um, like when I was in my late 20s, I had I was positioned in the mainstream world to have like a really nice career. Like I was like the position I was at that age was like a really big head start. And then I decided to walk away from it, and everyone's like, what's wrong with you? And then I went and I worked for an architect for 2 years, and I learned how to design. And like people started settling in around me, like people who knew me, and like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. This makes sense. You're going to be an architect. You're going to be a designer. You can do this. And I walked away from that. And then like after that, I had this really good gig where I was writing market feasibility studies, like for real estate developers out of my home. And it was like a really good gig. And like, okay, finally, he's going to do this. And then I was like, now I'm going to walk away from that as well. And then I just started making art. Like from that, I started to make art. Like there was no, and then like people were like really confused by that. And when I say people, I meant people who were in my life, people who knew me on a personal level. And finally, like, you know, I was having a degree of success in that. And like, okay, finally, this makes sense. He's finally going to settle. And then I walked away from that. I started making leather bags. And then same thing over and over and over and over and over again until that life went away.
Well, I mean, you're constantly creating, right?
Creating and destroying,
Yeah.
creating and destroying. And so then I took a leap from that world into when I was living in Marietta. And as soon as I hit Marietta, well, first thing I did was I made the starboard. I walked into the building in Marietta. I saw from the outside, I was like, I'd rather be dead than to have to live into this building. And then when I saw my space, I was like, I'll take it immediately. The place was fantastic. And the first thing I did was I measured the first 2 rooms, and they were in perfect golden ratio with one another. And I was like, all right, you know, and I'm 500 feet from the Susquehanna River, and they just put in a brand new bike trail, the most beautiful bike trail I've ever seen. It's along the river. It's like curved. There are places it goes through towns. It goes a little bit uphill, but not like intense uphill. Like it's and they're amazing sights along the river. And I got to spend my time going there. And that's when I started researching the Susquehanna River.
I don't know what like the scientific term for this is, but it's like, you know, when people who are on treadmills, like it's almost like the movement becomes like the mantra, so they can kind of go into a different brain. What is it, like the
Yes.
alpha brain
Yes.
wave?
Yes.
So like that's probably why, because you got all your info while you're like riding your bike along the river,
Oh,
right?
without a doubt,
Yeah.
without a doubt, was linked in experience was that bike riding, still like working through the process of letting go of an old life. I got I had a cushy life. I had a nice life. Like in terms of friends, in terms of home life, in terms of like, in many ways, I was really, really well fed. But that was not my path.
To make
And
you look even
so,
crazier to just blow it up each time. I mean, you know,
and
so
I
to
kept
say.
doing it until that had to happen. And so I found myself after like a stint in Wilmington, Delaware, I found myself in Marietta, and everything was starting to stabilize after probably after about 9 months of instability. 9 months of instability, then it stabilized in Marietta. And then as soon as it stabilized in Marietta, it was like, okay, now I can really finally like unpack all of the stuff that it takes, like when you're moving off of an old way of being, you know, and part of you in your life dies, like, you know, that's a process. And so I'm still going through that process. I'm riding my bike, and I moved there in early spring, so it's still cool. And it was the first season it was open. No one friggin' knew about it. And I'm just riding this one I'd ride with no hands, and I would ride it hard. I was good. And like all of that energy, and I rode with no hands because I understood the brainwave state which it would put you in. Like I don't know exactly what brainwave state it would be, but I know whatever brainwave state you are
I'm gonna
in.
look it up after because now I want to know too. Yeah.
I don't know if that's possible, but like it's like, well, think about this. Like look at like what's happening. You're balanced. You do not have like, you're balanced anytime you're on a bicycle, but when you take away your hands, you're balanced less upon like, you know, 4 points, and now or 5 points. Now you're balanced on 3 points really, but one main point, like, you know, right at your root. And in order to ride your bike well, you have to kind of like with no hands, you have to get heavy in your seat. Like you got to have like really relaxed down into it. And in order to do that physically, you have to be away from the handlebars. Like, because when you ride with no hands, you want to be able to grab the handlebars. And so you have to learn this trust. And this was a trail of all of these blind turns. So it's all about like, okay, am I going to make this blind turn without my hands near the handlebar because I don't know what's around the other side. And I did that to train that brain state. And it was during that training is when the Susquehanna, like when all of the Susquehanna stuff started coming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really cool. That's really well, okay, so I have to start with my original question just because I really want to know your answer, even though it kind of ties into what we're talking about, but I really am also just curious about it.
Okay.
And my original question that I wanted to start off this evening with was, do you remember your first conscious moment at like as a child? I didn't give you any warning.
So
And I'll tell you more while you ponder it, but it's because to me, it was very senses based. This is what I was describing, being in my body. Whereas I've talked to other people and it's very like personable, like their family members that they kind of realized, oh, okay, we're playing like these roles this time, something like that. And I like really liken it in my own experience to after, having my quote unquote awakening and discovering synchronicity, because to me it was very kind of like the same all over again. So now the way I'm using synchronicity in my life to me is just like I can just further my consciousness, and I'm um and I guess kind of like waking up deeper and deeper and deeper as that happens. So it's kind of like, wow, you wake up, you're a child and you're kind of like, whoa, where the hell am I? And now these things keep happening. So I was kind of thinking, like, if you can remember your first conscious moments in your body, or however it looked to you, well, then I would say that you had that again while you're riding your bike, along the Susquehanna, and you're getting your downloads, and this is happening. And how does this keep happening? And it keeps getting like more and more layers deep. This is where it's a working thesis. This is where I'm going with it, though.
First off, I want to say about like memory is interesting. I think about memory a lot. Most of my childhood memories feel like I'm looking at snapshots.
Right.
Like it not necessarily like I'm
You're the third
in
party
the
viewing.
in the memory as much as
Mhm.
I'm looking at the memory. So I don't know what that means. There are a couple memories which I have that I can remember. I remember the feelings I had, but I don't remember what it felt like. Like I could remember like memories of being scared or shot.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
But this is a memory a little bit later. I was probably in third grade and I was in elementary school. And I remember there was a kid who was in fifth grade and he was wearing a t-shirt. And the t-shirt was for, I think it was a surfboard company or a skateboard company, or maybe both, but it was called Town and Country. And its logo was a yin yang. So this is probably 1981. Okay. And I remember the moment I saw that logo, it was just like a logo on like a surfboard or a skateboard t-shirt. I remember I was unable to stop drawing it. Like I know it
Interesting.
resonate. Like, I mean, it's a memory I still have as 40 years later. Like I remember like that affected me. And I don't remember anything more than that, but I know that it did. So like in hindsight, if I'm thinking about inventorying the timeline to like what did this look like? I think that's a really healthy exercise to kind of understand someone's story. That would be like a top event.
So then you found yourself doing that a lot though, because you had told me previously that you were really into like what, Metatron's cube, I think it was, right? So there's something with symbols in you and your consciousness then.
Right. The
I mean,
Metatron
all of
cube.
us, yes,
Yeah.
but specifically
Yeah.
to you, yeah.
Well, I started doing it at a young age. Like I started doing the Metatron's cube. Probably I was in my 40s, maybe. And what I mean by that is I would just draw it by hand over and over again because it has, it's made up of all the different platonic solids. And so whatever that is, like there's an objective truth to that. It's like there's something unique about the description of those objects relative to, the parameters of living 3D life, like which is meaningful. So I would draw it just saying like, well, I want to be able to understand it at that level. And I know that level has nothing to do with consciousness or like thinking mind, rational mind. So I don't have to read a book. I just need to play with the symbols because it's written into how this realm works. Going back to like kind of the thesis, which you're talking about, and like maybe this will give a little bit more hindsight into the story, which I was telling you about the Freemasons. And the conclusion which I reach of like a lifetime of doing these sort of things is like, with synchronicity and like looking at meaning and like seeing the world in a deeper world was coming to the point of surrendering to the fact that there's something going on. Like there's someone, whether you want to think about it as writing the script or like, riding the wave, like of the Tao, like whatever, like this one, like primordial, like rhythm that really lives life. And that's not an abstract idea. It's like a real thing. Well, how's it a real thing? It's the thing that's in your life. It's like, it's not the life you're dreaming about on your bed. It's the life that you're living, whether that's like a real exciting life or that's like the life, like not doing anything, whatever the things are in your life, like that's when you have the dance with like whatever that rhythm is. And so to me, once you realize that, the only logical conclusion of like how do you apply that is you just do whatever makes sense like right in front of you. And the whole thing is about friggin' courage. The whole thing is about like I got to have more trust in subscribing to this than fear that whatever this may bring me into. So I went to the Masons, I went to West Baltimore, I went here, I walked away from everything that was familiar. And I'm like, all right, this is going to be whatever it's going to be. Like, I didn't want it to be bad.
Yeah.
But that was what the process is. And so to me, I joked a little bit earlier about still feeling like I'm in the gauntlet. And it's funny, I don't think I thought about this until this conversation we're having, that it was 9 months from when this cycle happened before I felt like I had stability for a couple of years, and I'm coming up on 9 months now in this cycle. So okay, so then my anticipatory outlook for the near-term future is like there's going to be stability, but I don't know what stability means. Like stability could be just like last time, or it could be a new sense of stability in being unstable. Like it doesn't matter. I just know stability is coming and I'm looking for it. And I think that I'm driving it, but I'm also think I'm just reading the script.
Do you also think that this came up yesterday and Taylor in my chat, like, do you feel that if you're following, like, and you're saying like who's driving the rhythm and you're reacting to it, and is someone else in the driver's seat, or are you truly in the driver's seat and you're looking? Because to me it's like you're either looking for something and you're going to be like, okay, this is what I'm looking for and this is how I'm going to continue in my travels, or is someone, and maybe it was you.
It's a dance. I don't know, like, so like what exactly is it? I'm more interested in how it works as opposed to what it is, because I don't think the answer can be what it is. Like, however someone's going to define what it is, well, then you've just committed to a story. That doesn't mean the story isn't an accurate description. I'm just saying, like, I'm comfortable with just saying, this is how you do this dance of being alive, tied to a human body, with ground beneath your feet and sky above your head. I don't know if it's an Earth. I don't know what the sky is. I don't know what the planets are, but I know I can see them. They could be
Right.
fake, but it's the realest thing I got. And until I get something else, I'm going to go
Yeah.
and trust this. But I'm still going to have my eyes wide open. And so I meet it that way. And that, I think, is the nature of, and what I've learned through this experience, which I think was more instinctual in me. And it's becoming more of a skill. And what I mean by a skill, it is something that can be honed. And it's my personal opinion that this is going to be part of the skill. This is the skill of the new realm.
Yeah.
Because the new realm, by definition, means that the old way of doing it cannot be done. Because if you continue to do it the old way, then you are in the old realm. And so if it is a new realm, that means you do not have a model for what it looks like. If you think you have a model, well, then you're in the old realm. I mean, that's just the definition of what all of that means. It's like, that doesn't mean it's good or bad. It's just recognizing what it is. And so the only thing the realest thing which I can trust, go and see if try to challenge and see if there's anything more real, is life itself. What are the choices before me? And then that's when the understanding the synchronicities and the patterns comes into actual, like this is how I navigate it.
So each cycle, then, to me, you're just deepening you're kind of breaking even more chords to how it might have been in the old realm. And like, now you're really, truly free.
Maybe. There's also this, it's like, these are the sort of thoughts which I have in my mind. This is the question. How much was the old world or my old experiences to prepare me for what's to come, aka like wisdom, and how much is just going to be doing something completely new and unlike anything done before? And I don't have an answer to it, but like, that's kind of like how I look at things right now in my own personal life.
Cool. Well, you're doing lots of stuff that has never been done before.
And some of the stuff is just like what you're saying. It's like there's a cycle back, but it's different.
Well, to me, the cycle back, like, this is just in my own experience, is because I didn't learn something deep enough, or I have to go take a second or third or fourth peek at it. That's why it's coming back. And that, to me, is like, oh, I didn't pass that initiation, even if it was super small.
Yeah, I would never think that way in a million years.
See, isn't that interesting? Wow. Okay, cool.
If something shows itself to me again, it's something for me to go look at for again. I don't know if it's because I failed a test. I don't know if it's because like now wouldn't it be fun to go and, like, you know how like they're video games and like the kids play them all the time and they play the same one over and over again until they figure it out.
Yeah,
then it gets fun. There's a point when you're playing that video game before you figure it out, to like but you're no longer like you're no longer a beginner, where it's like really kind of fun. You're like got new skills. Like, that's what it seems like, particularly right now, for anything that interacts with the culture. But I think it's
but that's kind of what I just said about my method. Now I'm thinking that I just took it from video game stuff, because then it's like, well, I didn't pass the level, so I had to go back and play it all over again.
Right.
Maybe I'm not playing it all over again, but
right. The
I went
script so
down
that it
to,
makes perfect sense.
yeah.
Like, it is what it is. Like, that's the nature. That's what the past 5 years has shown me firsthand, that whatever I think it is seems to happen. It's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just what seems to happen. And it's like, now what are you going to do about that? So you know what? One of the reasons I was never worried about like the Masons doing anything to me
Go
It's
on.
because I thought I was writing it. I was like, this is too perfect. Like, I don't know how this realm works, but it is too much circulated around the thoughts that are in my mind. I've got two choices. These were the two choices I had. I'm like, I've either come out of like some top secret MK Ultra childhood programming where they planted this in my subconscious, and then they've got like this gang stalk of people who like come into my life to pull these experiences out. Like, that was a real
That's pretty
possibility.
plausible, though.
It's pretty
That's
plausible.
pretty
You're absolutely
plausible.
right. But I'll never know. I'll never know. So there's that. Or, which is equally as plausible and is equally as absurd, is like somehow whatever I'm thinking is happening. And I've been studying like conspiracies and mysteries, and I'm living here and I'm all like emotional, riding a bike with no hands. And next thing you know, I'm in the coolest fucking conspiracy I'd ever even heard of. Like rat. So
Well,
that was the one
yeah.
time. There was one time and one time only that I was just like, what the fuck? And it was when I was looking at the John Smith map of Virginia, and I was like, I saw the reversed 40, and I already had been doing work and seeing how it was connected to Francis Bacon and all these Rosicrucians. And like, I had the Manly P. Hall book, you know, the big thick one, the Secret Teachings of All Ages, which I've never friggin' read. Why would I read that? And then all of a sudden I was like, this is the greatest book in the world. It literally told me how to decipher the map. It's like, these are the techniques which the Rosicrucians did. It was just like 5 pages. All I had to read was 5 pages. And I like read what they said. And then I was like, oh, well, let me just apply that logic on this map. And I'm like, it's saying the Susquehanna River, the 40th parallel. I'm like, where am I? And I typed it into Google. I had
Oh,
no
you
idea
didn't
what the
even know you
parallel.
were on the 40th?
No
Oh my God. See,
friggin'
these are the moments that I'm kind of like, this is the fun part of you discovering each little itty bitty bit. Imagining your brain just going, holy shit, man, I am on the
it
40th
was just more
parallel.
confirmation that this is what I am to do.
5 pages in, and I
And then
just learned
and then
steganography.
particularly in hindsight, like saying, how did that come into like realistically? Did Mike, the conspiracy guy, all of a sudden like figure out the conspiracy in his backyard? Or did he make it happen just through the sheer will of power? And if that's the case, what is that of willpower, of mind power? What does that say about the nature of this reality? Like, I'm not necessarily saying that happened, but I certainly hold I hold that as the story I like to see. And I'm experiencing, and the more I see that, you know, the more I like hold that and just like trust it, like the easier it is to do these sort of things.
Yeah. Well, and then it's kind
But
of
it
like maybe
comes
we're all,
there's
yeah.
definitely friction. I'll tell you what, it does come with friction. And the friction is all my own cause.
See, and I was like, again, I would be, well, it's so interesting then. Now that I'm thinking about how different we are, and we can experience like very similar energies or symbols in a day slash a week slash a month, because my method is completely unlike yours, but the energies are clearly available to both of us. So that's going to be in my head from now on till I work that one out. But
I mean, I think that's part of the fun is when you realize, like, if you go so much of like we'll call it the genre of consciousness, like it bumps up against all of these different sort of ideas, right? Like it bumps up against magic and psychology and neurolinguistic programming. And then you're going to get into like secret societies, and you're going to get into like all this sort of stuff. And they all kind of, and then mind control. All of these are kind of
just ends
different.
at Kabbalah, but yes. Right.
So I mean, that tells you at the level of the story, like what happens when there's none of that.
Well, this is what I'm thinking now. I really am enjoying your non-attachment style. Maybe I'll get there.
So this is what it is. Like, I don't want to live on a mountaintop, like in a robe, like talking to a yak, even though I'm kind of doing that talking to horses. I want to interact. I want to interact with you know, the false reality, the people. It's like whatever it is. Like, I'm like, I'm here. Like, this is how I'm going to do it. Like, and I don't have any idea where here is. And I realized that I realized there were times that I defined it more clearly. But I realized, like, it doesn't matter what I define it at. Like, all that matters is, like, how do I show up? And having the courage and then the faith, and then, like, it becomes easier to, like, just, like, trust it. And I might be extreme in it, but I also think that it's a demonstration, because I think we're seeing something collective right now, and everyone is kind of meeting life. They're like, okay, now what? Like, I could see the world has changed. They kind of want me to go back in the way it used to be. They definitely are telling me what it's going to look like if I continue down that path. What if I don't go down that path? And that's where you're going to start to bump up against, like, I don't know what to do in it. The old model doesn't make sense. And that's when you're going to have to go and look and say, like, well, what are my realistic options? What can I do right now? And one of them is probably going to make more sense. You're just going to have to choose, and you're going to have to trust. Like, that's the skill of, like, learning to be able to, like, this is it, like, warts and all, like, it seems overused, but as an analogy, but it's quite literally, like, this is a birth, right? It's messy. Like, the entire world has, like, this is what, like, when people, I don't like this language has been used in the past, like, in many ways, which I would internally roll my eyes listening to someone talk that way. Like, there's been a new earth, a new world has been born, but it has, or at least in my reality and every other person who I seem to be connected to, which just confirms that, that it's different. And what that is like, we're all meeting this new, different way of life. People are moving away from what was comfortable little by little. And where everyone is kind of learning to have more and more trust to go into new places and let go. And this is all mental. This is all mental constructs. It doesn't have to be anything physical. It doesn't mean, like, you have to move your house. It has to be, like, how you think of your house, how you think of money, how you think of the future, the career, all this sort of stuff. How you think of, like the good guys and the bad guys. And then life carries you. Well, that's what I've been experiencing and been telling. And somehow that's tied to the Freemasons as well. And that to me has me perplexed.
I mean, I could go many directions with that. I think that was very beautiful what you just said. That was, like, very inspirational. And I kind of want to leave it right there, because it makes me want to talk about, like, this whole bifurcation thing with, like, how the new age has been intentionally hijacked to make people expect a bit of a savior. Mm-hmm. And you explained it in a much nicer way, very positively. And I want to talk about loads of other things. So I kind of want to leave it right there, because that was not anything that I had in mind to chat about tonight. But I really liked all of that. And it gives me lots of places to go. And I want to have you on again. So
there we go. How about this? You have me on again, and next time it'll just be like, you ask a question and then I answer it, and then you ask the next question.
No, I never want it to be that. But
I think that would be fun, because it will be a really good juxtaposition to that roller coaster ride I just put you on.
Can we just call it 20 Questions with Michael Wann? And
I just call it 20 Questions with Michael Wann.
I don't think you've ever been on a show that's done that before.
I have.
Oh. Well,
I think it was called 10 Questions, but it wasn't just about me. They just invite people on and they ask the same 10 questions. It's kind of an interesting concept.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God, my kid just filled his pants. Do you hear that?
That is the best way to end the show. Considering, see, like, that's the perfect synchronicity. This is it.
Considering that when I was on your show, I did a poop hole. Oh my God.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. You listen to life's cues. Now it's time. We're saying it's you need to take care of business.
Time to go.
And so now we'll go.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Michael.
You're welcome. This was a lot of fun.